Hey, congratulations! You're almost halfway through your training program. Good job. We're about to look at Section 808, which describes how the FDCPA defines what is called unfair practices. If you got something to write with, let's get started. As a debt collector, you may not use unfair or unconscionable means to collect or attempt to collect any debt. While it may be difficult to define what is fair and what is not fair, the FDCPA gives 8 very specific examples of what it deems as unfair. These are practices that are prohibited under the FDCPA, but the list again is not exhaustive. Number 1, collecting any money that is not specifically authorized by the agreement creating the debt. That covers amounts such as interest, late fees, and other such charges. You should also be aware that some state laws put further restrictions on the types and amount of fees you can collect. Number 2, collecting post-dated checks that are dated more than 5 days from the date you solicit the check. The exception to this rule is if you send the consumer a notice no more than 10 days before you intend to deposit the check and no less than 3 business days prior to such deposit. In other words, you can solicit post-dated checks more than 5 days out, but you have to send a notice before you deposit it. That notice must be sent to the consumer anywhere between 3 to 10 days before you intend to deposit that check. No sooner and no later. Number 3, soliciting a post-dated check in order to threaten the consumer in any way, such as threatening criminal proceedings if the check turns out to not be good. Number 4, depositing or threatening to deposit the post-dated check prior to the date of the check. Don't do that. Number 5, causing the consumer to incur charges for communications that are concealed by you. For instance, making collect telephone calls to the consumer or sending telegrams that the consumer has to pay for. Number 6, threatening dispossession or disablement of the consumer's property if you have no right or intention of doing so. We covered a similar item in an earlier section. Do not threaten to do something that you do not intend to do or that you are not allowed to do under state and federal law. Number 7, never send out any postcards. And number 8, do not use language or symbols on the outside of any envelope or any communication for that matter to the consumer that indicates that you are in the debt collection business. Those are all unfair practices as defined by the FDCPA. If you're ever in doubt whether you're allowed to behave in a certain way, you should ask your immediate superior. That concludes 808.